When we think about immigration in America, we often picture Ellis Island, the Statue of Liberty, or hopeful families arriving to start a new life. But the story of immigrants in the 1930s tells a much darker tale, one filled with fear, forced removals, and government raids that changed thousands of lives forever. The 1930s were the years of the Great Depression, a time when jobs were scarce, food was hard to find, and the country struggled to survive an economic collapse unlike anything before. Unemployment reached nearly 25% by 1933. Every city, town, and neighborhood faced fear and uncertainty. During this time, Mexican and Mexican American communities were often blamed for taking jobs away from native-born Americans. This was not a time of tolerance. Across the Southwest, local and federal authorities organized immigration raids, large-scale efforts to remove immigrants, often without regard to legal status. Thousands of U.S. citizens were also caught in the sweep. To understand why these raids happened, we need to look at context. The United States had already passed restrictive immigration laws in the 1920s. The Immigration Act of 1924 limited immigrants from Europe and Asia and established strict quotas. Mexicans were not formally restricted, but in practice, they were increasingly targeted, especially as economic conditions worsened. The government justified the raids as a way to reduce unemployment and relieve welfare systems, but the human cost was immense. The raids were often executed with shocking efficiency. Immigration agents, local police, and sometimes volunteers went door to door, workplace to workplace, checking the papers of anyone suspected of being undocumented. Families were torn apart, children separated from parents, and entire communities were thrown into fear. California became one of the most affected states. Agricultural fields, where Mexican and Mexican American laborers worked, became sites of anxiety. Workers were rounded up at work, loaded onto buses or trains, and sent hundreds of miles away, often back to Mexico, sometimes deeper into rural areas to prevent them from returning. Entire neighborhoods emptied overnight. The very people who fed the nation and worked tirelessly were suddenly considered outsiders. Estimates suggest that between 400,000 and 1 million people were deported or coerced into leaving the U.S. during the 1930s. The raids did not distinguish between immigrants and U.S. citizens of Mexican descent. Many children who were legally citizens were sent alongside their parents. Families lost homes, jobs, and a sense of security that they had worked hard to achieve. One account comes from a man named Jose, who was just a boy when federal agents came to his family's home in Los Angeles. He remembered waking to the sound of pounding on the door. Officers demanded papers. His parents showed every document they had, but it wasn't enough. The family was escorted to a bus station, along with dozens of other families, and transported to Mexico, a country Jose had never known. For years, he and his siblings were separated from friends, schools, and the life they had grown up in. This story, sadly, was repeated in thousands of homes across the Southwest. The raids were not limited to rural areas. Cities like San Antonio, El Paso, and Houston also saw Mexican American neighborhoods targeted. Children were pulled from schools, workers taken from factories, and families forced to prove legal status under extreme pressure. Some families lived in hiding to avoid deportation. Fear became a constant companion. Why did this happen? Partly it was economic. Native-born Americans believed immigrants were competing for jobs. Partly it was political. Local and state officials could gain support by taking a hard-line stance on immigration. And partly it was racial. Mexican immigrants and Mexican-American communities were often considered other, treated as second-class residents regardless of citizenship. Despite the fear, there was resistance. Community organizations, churches, and labor unions worked to protect families. Some local authorities refused to cooperate with deportation efforts, realizing the raids were inhumane and destructive. Employers often pushed back, especially in agriculture, because they needed immigrant labor to keep fields and industries running. The raids left lasting scars. Entire generations grew up with trauma. Many never returned to the communities from which they had been removed. Those who stayed learned to live cautiously, avoiding attention from authorities. Families relied on each other for protection, and over time rebuilt neighborhoods, businesses, and institutions, but the memory of the raids persisted. Historians today look back at the 1930s immigration raids as one of the largest civil rights violations against Mexican-American communities in U.S. history. These events remind us how economic fear, political pressure, and racial prejudice can combine to create policies with devastating consequences. They also show the resilience of immigrant communities, who endured displacement, separation, and systemic discrimination, yet continued to build lives in the United States. As the country recovered from the Great Depression, policies slowly changed. Labor shortages during World War II and new immigration laws allowed displaced communities to gradually reintegrate. But the story of the 1930s raids remains crucial, a reminder of the challenges faced by Mexican-American communities and the importance of protecting human rights. For today's audiences, these events are not just history lessons. They are cautionary tales about the human cost of fear-driven policies. They remind us to consider who is considered deserving of protection. How should society balance economic hardship with civil rights? How can communities protect themselves from unjust policies? The immigration raids of the 1930s are a story of tragedy and resilience. Families were uprooted, children lost homes, and communities faced fear and uncertainty. Yet people survived, adapted, and continued to contribute to the fabric of American life. Their story deserves to be remembered, a lesson that history is not only about the past, but also about shaping a more just and compassionate future.